My boss likes to tell people he saw it coming. He didn't see this coming. When I canceled the final payment on a six-figure project and watched his career start to fold in on itself, I wasn't angry. That's the part that still surprises me. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't throwing things. I wasn't even shaking. I was just done. Like a switch that had been half stuck for years finally clicked into place. If you've ever sat in a meeting and listened to someone else take credit for work you bled for, you already know the taste in my mouth that day. Bitter, metallic, familiar. The difference this time was simple. I was the only one who could close the financial side of that project. My name, my sign-off, my access, and he looked me in the eye in front of a client and said he wasn't expecting me on the project. So I made sure the project wouldn't expect his money. My name's Mark. I'm the boring kind of IT guy. Infrastructure and integrations. I make systems talk to each other, keep them from falling over, and write the kind of documentation no one reads until something catches fire. I'm not flashy. I don't care about company happy hours or team-building scavenger hunts. I like quiet dashboards and green status lights. My boss, Ethan, is the opposite. He's all charm and story. Perfect hair, expensive watch, big laugh that always lands a second too loud. If you met him at a bar, you'd think he ran the whole company. Technically, he was just a project manager with a good memory for names and an obsession with being in every email thread. For a long time, we made a weird kind of sense. He could talk a client down. I could keep their servers upright. He did the shiny kickoff decks. I wrote the technical plans he pretended to summarize. I started noticing the cracks about 3 years in. Little things at first. A line in a meeting. We've built a solution where we automatically reconcile all records nightly, when we meant me alone in my apartment at 1 a.m. A slide where my design diagram showed up with his initials in the corner. A joke at a team lunch. Mark's my wizard in the back room. I don't even know how he does it. I just promise it. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. It was easier. Our big client, Northline Logistics, came in last year. Multi-site integration, legacy warehouse system, cloud CRM, financial platform. Ugly, messy, right in my wheelhouse. They wanted one company to own the whole thing, and our sales director threw Ethan's name out before the contract was even signed. Ethan, you'll lead. Mark, you'll make it real, he said, like he was assigning chairs. From day one, the project was Ethan's stage. He hosted the intro calls, dropped buzzwords like he had a quota, and promised timelines that made my teeth hurt. Absolutely. We can do a phased rollout in 6 months, he told them, while I mouthed 9 behind my muted microphone and started drafting a risk log in another window. I spent the next half year living in that risk log. There were weeks where my life was basically a loop. Get up, coffee, VPN in, fix whatever the overnight sync jobs had broken, answer a flood of emails that all started with quick question, jump on emergency calls where warehouse managers yelled about stuck orders, stay late to write patches so Ethan could send a good news team summary before he went home. He kept CCing the VP of operations on those summaries. He never CC'd my name. It wasn't all martyrdom. I got paid decently. I liked the puzzle of it. There's a strange satisfaction in watching a dashboard go from red to yellow to green because you understood the one broken piece no one else could see. But every time Ethan said, I've been working with the team on, instead of Mark has, something in my chest tightened another millimeter. The money side of the project came up around month 5. Northline had structured the contract with milestones, 30% up front, 40% after successful pilot, 30% after full rollout and sign-off. Our CFO didn't want sales touching the milestone releases because they'd approve anything to get their commission. So the company put the financial gate in the hands of whoever controlled the technical acceptance. That ended up being me. I was the one who wrote the acceptance criteria. I was the one who signed the pilot report. And when the finance team set up the payment workflow in our system, they wired it so that my approval triggered the final invoice. I didn't ask for that power. It just made sense on paper. At the time, I didn't think of it as leverage. It was just another box to tick when things worked. We hit the pilot milestone late but clean. Northline's test site went live. Orders moved. Scans registered. Invoices flowed. There were bugs, of course, but nothing catastrophic. Ethan hosted the celebration call. Camera on. Smile bright. "Couldn't have done it without the whole team," he said, and for a second I thought he might actually say my name. He didn't. He just mentioned our engineering guys and moved on to his favorite slide, future phases. After the call, he slapped my shoulder on the way past my desk. "You're killing it, man. This is how we make ourselves indispensable," he said. "To who?" I asked. It slipped out. He frowned like he hadn't heard me, then wandered off to tell the sales floor how he'd landed the pilot. The "we weren't expecting you" moment came a couple months later, on a Wednesday that already felt wrong. Northline's leadership team was coming in for what the calendar called a final readout and next steps. The idea was simple. Show them the whole thing working end to end, walk through performance numbers, confirm they were happy, then get verbal sign-off so finance could trigger the last 30% payment, and everyone could pretend we weren't going to be supporting the mess for another year. I spent 3 nights preparing for that meeting, pulled logs, cleaned up dashboards, built clear demo scenarios, tested failovers, wrote a concise, non-bloated deck that actually explained what we'd done under the hood in plain English. At 7:30 a.m., the day of, I was already in the office, checking the monitoring screens like a nervous parent checking a baby monitor. Everything was green. The one known flaky integration behaved itself. I took a breath and actually felt proud. At 9:50, I walked into the big glass conference room with my laptop under my arm. Ethan was already there, at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, tie off, performing relaxed confidence. 2 Northline execs sat on one side, one of them scrolling through something on his phone. Our VP of Ops sat near the end, sipping coffee. There were pastries on a tray no one had touched. Ethan looked up when I came in. For a split second, I saw something like annoyance flicker across his face. Then it smoothed over. "Oh," he said, with that practiced half-laugh he uses when he's about to say something he wants to sound harmless. "We weren't expecting you on this project, Mark." I actually thought he was joking. I stood there, stupidly, my hand on the back of the nearest chair. Then I realized he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the client, with a little shrug, as if to say, "You know how tech guys are, they just wander in." The Northline guy with the phone glanced up, then back down like it wasn't worth his attention. I set my laptop on the table anyway, because for a second I didn't know what else to do. My ears were hot. My hands weren't shaking, but the space between my ribs felt too small. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Ethan finally turned his full attention on me, smile tightening just a fraction. "I mean, today's more of a high-level business conversation," he said. "We've got the technical side under control. You didn't have to rearrange your schedule for this. We weren't really expecting you on the project call." The way he said it, in front of my own work, with my own dashboards glowing green on the screen behind him, was the moment something simple in me shifted. Ethan expected me to walk out of the room like an obedient tech worker who'd been overly eager. Instead, I sat down, calmly, right across from him. Northline's VP looked at me over her glasses. "You're Mark, right? The integration lead?" Ethan jumped in too fast. "He supports the engineering side. We've streamlined roles for clarity." Streamlined. The guy who personally launched the system at 3 in the morning was now being described as a decorative accessory. "Actually," I said, opening my laptop, "I handle all technical approvals for this project." The room went quieter than it should have. Ethan's shoulders tightened, like I'd stepped off his carefully staged script. But the client had already turned toward me. "You're the one who fixed that stuck order sync last month, right?" I nodded. Ethan tried to slide back in. We handled that as a team. The VP raised a finger. Ethan, hold on. I opened the dashboards, performance charts, migration logs, audit reports, everything I'd pulled together over the last 3 sleepless nights, and I explained it plainly. No showmanship, no ego, just clean facts. Within 5 minutes, it became obvious. Ethan didn't actually understand a single technical process he'd claimed to be overseeing. He sat there with that polite half-smile, but his fingers tapped the table. A tell only people who knew him well would recognize his fury. When I finished, the VP closed her laptop and looked directly at Ethan. Why would we have a meeting about a system without the person who built it? Ethan did what he always did under pressure. Started talking more, louder, emptier. I didn't want to overwhelm the room with details. We're keeping things focused on big picture alignment. Mark tends to get stuck in the weeds, and those weeds, I cut in, are the reason your warehouse didn't shut down last quarter. For a moment, the shine dropped off him completely. Even his voice wavered. The client quickly moved the meeting along. Professionals don't enjoy watching someone fall in real time, but the truth was already out. Ethan wasn't cutting me out of the project because I was unnecessary. He was doing it because he couldn't control what he didn't understand. And that's when everything started sliding downhill. After the meeting, Ethan slammed the door to the phone booth and stuck his head out. "Mark, inside, now." He sat across from me, palms flat on the table. "Don't ever undercut me like that again," he hissed. "I manage the narrative with the client." "By pretending I'm not even part of the project?" I asked calmly. "By keeping things clean," he snapped. "You're too technical. You confuse people. When I say I wasn't expecting you, I mean stay in your lane. I run the relationship. You execute the tasks I assign you." Execute the tasks I assign you. That's how he saw me. I closed my laptop. "You remember the final payment workflow goes through my approval?" I said. He smirked, like I'd made a joke. "That's just paperwork. You'll approve it when I tell you to. This is bigger than you, Mark. Don't confuse access with authority." And right there, right in that sentence, something changed in me. Not anger, cold, clear, physical cold. I understood something simple. I wasn't working with a manager. I was working with someone who believed my effort was a natural resource, something he was entitled to, that I owed him, that my labor belonged to him. And if he decided to rewrite the story, he'd rewrite me out of it too. 2 days later, right in the middle of the week, the system crashed, hard. 3 warehouses offline, operators frozen with no tasks, loaders standing idle, Northline panicking. Ethan answered the call, of course. "We're on it." "Who's we?" the client asked. "My team. We've got it under control." By team, he meant me, only me. I logged in, traced the issue in 15 minutes. An optimization step Ethan had personally added without telling anyone to speed up testing. He wanted to impress the client. He nearly wiped out 500,000 orders. I stabilized the system. Ethan emailed the client, "Fixed, as expected," like I was a tool, not a person. Later that night, he leaned in my doorway and said, "Nice save today. That's why I need you focused on engineering, not trying to play executive." And he smiled the way people do when they think you're too obedient to ever say no. But that was just the surface. I had noticed something he didn't. The logs were strange. Gaps. Missing validations. Approvals pushed without proper checks. Reports he'd sent claiming team review that no engineer had ever seen. He wasn't just hiding problems, he was hiding the hiding. Half a day was all it took to piece it together. Ethan had lied to the client about the status of part of the system and planned to close the project early to claim a performance bonus. If the final payment went through, Northline would receive a partially incomplete, potentially vulnerable integration. And guess whose name was on the responsibility documents? Not Ethan's. Mine. That's when I realized he didn't just want me out of the spotlight. He wanted me positioned as the scapegoat when something finally exploded. But that was only the beginning. I didn't confront Ethan. People like him feed on confrontation. They twist it, reframe it, turn it into proof that you're the unstable one. No, I did what I'm good at. I opened the system logs, the documentation, the workflow approvals, the email history, the ticket trails, and I let the truth sit quietly in front of me. And what I found made everything snap into focus. Ethan had been editing documents after I submitted them. Not massively. Just enough to make it look like he'd driven the decisions. Changing implemented by Mark to reviewed with PM, removing warnings I'd written, adjusting timelines so it looked like he'd planned the schedule instead of reacting to reality. Worse, he'd approved a vendor configuration without telling me, the kind of configuration that couldn't pass audit, the kind that exposes the company to penalties, the kind that requires a full rollback if discovered after launch. And since my signature was required for final technical acceptance, guess whose name would have been on the line when it blew up? Not his. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't pace. I didn't talk to anyone. I just wrote down one sentence in my notebook. If he says I'm not part of the project, then I won't be part of the payment. That thought sat so calmly in my chest, it almost scared me. The next morning, finance pinged me. Can we expect final approval by Friday? Client wants to close invoicing this cycle. I typed back, pending review. Short, neutral, the kind of message that doesn't raise alarms until it does. At lunch, I forwarded the vendor config issue to legal with a question. Can I approve a milestone if these errors are unresolved? 10 minutes later, a lawyer knocked on my office door. Absolutely not, she said. If you sign off, you're responsible for the failure. Who made the changes? I slid the modified document across the desk. She read 3 lines and leaned back slowly. This is sloppy, she said. And dangerous? Sloppy wasn't the word I would have used. Reckless. And it wasn't an accident. Ethan was betting on one thing, that I would cover his mess like I always did. Not this time. That evening, Ethan strolled into my office with his usual fake casual energy. Quick question, he said. Finance says you haven't approved the final milestone yet. We need that done. I found issues, I said. He laughed. Mark, buddy, there are always issues. Just sign it. No. He blinked like the word confused him. You're joking. No, I repeated. I'm not. His mouth tightened. Mark, don't make this difficult. The client expects the release. I've already told leadership we're good. You told them something that isn't true. He stared at me for a long, silent second. Listen, he finally said, lowering his voice. I know you're upset about the meeting. I shouldn't have said you weren't expected. Fine. I get it. You want credit. But don't tank the project because of your ego. My ego? The man who spent 6 months taking credit for my work was accusing me of ego. The documentation was altered, I said, and the config isn't compliant. We can't close. He exhaled sharply through his nose. We'll fix that later, just to prove it. No. This time the word hit him differently. He leaned in. I'm your manager. You don't get to say no. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't intimidated. I wasn't even tense. I was done. You said I wasn't on the project, I said, so I stopped acting like I am. His eyes flickered, not with fear, but with the first hint of realizing he'd overplayed his hand. The next morning, the dominoes began to fall. At 9:12 a.m., the vendor emailed asking why their final payment hadn't been triggered. At 9:30, Northline's VP emailed both Ethan and me, asking for the updated technical acceptance report. At 10:05, Finance flagged a discrepancy in Ethan's timeline. At 10:40, Legal sent a memo to senior leadership. Final milestone cannot be approved due to unresolved compliance issues. Primary responsibility and documentation inconsistencies point to PM oversight. And at 11:03, Ethan stormed into my office, face red, jaw tight. What the hell did you do? He hissed. I did my job, I said. You blindsided me. You made me look incompetent. You did that yourself. He slammed his palm on the doorway. You think this makes you look good? You think they'll thank you for holding up a six-figure release? You're killing your own career. But that's the thing he never understood. I wasn't choosing revenge. I was choosing accuracy. They asked me to evaluate the system. I said, I did. The system isn't ready. This isn't your call. It is, I said quietly. By policy, by workflow, and by your own emails. You gave me the authority months ago. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, the man who always had a story had none. I turned back to my screen and typed a report summarizing the issues. Calm, precise, professional. Behind me, Ethan let out a breath full of panic and fury. You're destroying everything, he said. I didn't even look up. I'm documenting everything, I answered. There's a difference. And that night, for the first time in months, I slept. Because I knew something he didn't. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. The fallout didn't explode. It collapsed, quietly, methodically, like a building whose support beams had been slowly sawed through. By Monday morning, the story had reached every floor of the company without me saying a single word. Legal had flagged Ethan's changes. Finance had flagged the missing approvals. Northline had flagged the inconsistencies. And leadership did what leadership always does when something smells like liability. They called a meeting. I walked into the conference room with a printed copy of every altered document. Ethan was already there, pale under the fluorescent lights, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone chalk white. He didn't look at me. Our VP of Operations opened the meeting bluntly. We've identified workflow irregularities on the Northline project. We need clarity. Ethan immediately launched into performance mode. This is being blown out of proportion. Mark misinterpreted a draft version of the documentation. I simply formatted. I slid the original files across the table. These are the versions I submitted, I said quietly, and these are the versions Ethan sent out. The VP compared them side by side. The room went very still. After a moment, the VP asked, Ethan, why did you remove warnings about non-compliant configurations? Ethan swallowed. They weren't relevant. They were required. I intended to address them later. But you didn't, I said, not accusatory, just factual. Northline's representative, who joined via video, broke the silence next. If these issues weren't disclosed, we can't approve the final milestone. That exposes our entire downstream process. Leadership turned to Ethan. Why wasn't this escalated? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I thought it was under control. It wasn't enough. Not for them. Not today. Not after months of him polishing his own image while letting the technical side carry the weight. The VP folded her hands. Effective immediately, Ethan, you are removed from the project. A formal review will follow. He blinked rapidly. Wait, I've led the client relationship for months. You can't. This isn't a debate, she said. You jeopardized a major account. Then she turned to me. Mark, can you stabilize the remaining issues and guide the project to real completion? I nodded. Yes? Do you need additional staff? I need transparency, I answered, and direct communication with legal and the client. You'll have it. The meeting ended there. Ethan stayed seated long after the call disconnected. When I stood to leave, he finally spoke. Not angry, not triumphant, just hollow. You made them turn on me. I paused at the door. No, I said softly. You did that yourself. I just stopped buffering the impact. He didn't respond. He didn't have anything left to say. For the next 2 weeks, I rebuilt the broken pieces he'd hurried through, fixed the configurations, rewrote the documentation, verified every integration point until legal signed off without a single red mark. Northline approved the real final milestone. Finance released the payment. Everything went through clean. During that time, Ethan was quietly reassigned to an internal coordination role. No clients, no large projects, no bonuses. a desk job with no stage to perform on. People whispered, of course, but not about me. The story was simple. He hid problems. He got caught. The project got saved. That was it. No drama, no fireworks, just consequences. A week after the final rollout, HR scheduled a career conversation with me. I expected nothing. I didn't want anything. But the VP surprised me. We'd like you to step into a lead architect role, she said, with compensation adjusted accordingly. I didn't smile. I didn't get excited. I just breathed. On one condition, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Which is? No middleman between me and the engineering team. No PMs speaking on my behalf. No one rewriting my work. She nodded slowly. That's reasonable. And just like that, the part of my life I'd been carrying like a weight finally set down. The last loose end came a few days later. Ethan caught me in the parking lot after work, not cornering me, just waiting. He looked smaller, not physically, just less inflated. Why didn't you warn me? He asked. I searched his face. He genuinely didn't understand. You told me I wasn't part of the project, I said, so I stepped aside. He looked down at the pavement, jaw working like he wanted to argue but couldn't find a foothold. I didn't think you'd actually do all this. I didn't do anything to you, I replied. I just stopped protecting you. Silence settled between us. Not tense, just final. I needed you, he said quietly. No, I answered. You needed control, and you lost it. He didn't say goodbye. He just nodded, defeated, and walked away. Northline's system has been stable ever since. My team works cleanly. No more disappearing credit. No more altered documents. No more managers trying to turn my work into their spotlight. Sometimes people ask me if I regret pushing back. I don't. I didn't burn anything down. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't sabotage him. I simply removed myself from the place where he used me, and everything that wasn't built on honesty collapsed on its own. On my desk now, I keep one piece of paper, the untouched version of the document Ethan edited. The one line he tried to erase is still there. System stability achieved through direct engineering oversight. Mark H. A simple sentence, and the end of the story.